running a business is a tough and lonely journey. Welcome to the Executives on the Front Lines podcast, where business owners and C-suite executives like you will get real answers to your everyday business problems. I'm your host, Jeff Palacio, and together we will learn from senior leaders who have occupied every top box of a company's org chart for every size organization and who like to roll up their sleeves while checking their egos at the door. Welcome to another episode of Executives on the Front Lines. We have a repeat guest today, Baron Lucas, and Baron's going to talk about a new service, which I love, the Chief of Staff advisory service for firms. So Baron, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jeff. This is my third time, so maybe third time's a charm.
We're offering this Chief of Staff service as to help lower to middle market companies. What is the service and what business challenges does it solve for companies?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Great question. So let's frame the discussion by what kind of companies I think this fits into. And I think it fits into where I think our sweet spot is in ExecHQ. That's startups, so zero EBITDA to about 30 million EBITDA. 30 million EBITDA is a pretty sizable company. But I think, remember the podcast, last podcast we did together, I think it was 24 January, it seems like a lifetime ago. We talked about chaos that stunts growth and what happens in these kind of companies. And all the things we talked about then is what the Chief of Staff as a service, I think, mitigates. That is, it provides for companies that have a lot of uncertainty. And who is that? Everybody. This is a very uncertain world. The economy is not doing that great. We've got political upheaval, we've got international upheaval, we've got workforce upheaval. There's a number of things that is causing a lot of headwind. Headwind causes chaos, and it causes it because these companies don't have the wherewithal necessarily to plan their way and anticipate the requirements and actuate those requirements in an actionable plan, discipline plan, and it doesn't. It requires a certain kind of culture that most companies on their own can't develop.
So I know, I meet with a lot of CEOs and presidents of companies and business owners. It seems like a few are, a fair amount are using EOS, the Gino Wickman methodology. What's so unique about our ExecHQ services, Chief of Staff service?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I'm very familiar with EOS. Years ago, 10 years ago, when I first started to consult, I looked at it, took the course, incorporated it with some of my clients, and it's a great program. What I think is unique about us is one, there is a very robust planning process that I created when I left the Marine Corps in 2007. That's part of the process. So it is unlike anything that is available out there. So it provides you a methodology to translate the chaos and the uncertainty into certainty and actionable items. That's one. Two, I'm old. I'm 64 years old, and I've got 44 years of experience. You've got 30 plus years or 48 plus years of experience. And so we've got 75, 80 of us, from CEOs down to whatever the alphabet soup is in the C-suite, that we can bring in to fix something or to augment something that a standalone advisory service can't do. Now, I can only do what I can do. You can do what you can do. And we're both pretty good at it. But then all we are is a hammer that looks for a nail. When we go in with this service, we take a look at the company holistically, figure out what the stakeholders want. Who are they? The CEO, the owner, the board, and figure out what is it that they're looking to do, and assess the situation, and then bring other tools besides the Chief of Staff as a service to bear. The Chief of Staff becomes the quarterback, if you will, or the coach of a football team even. That translates a lot of resources into a professionalized, successful C-suite that brings the company greater growth, greater profitability, and frankly, a culture that attracts the right kind of people to the company and attracts the right kind of business opportunities. That is not, I think that makes it a very unique service for ExecHQ.
Yeah, no, I love that. So, when CEOs, business owners are looking for help, if you're looking at the typical, as you said, the C-suite alphabet soup, it's Monday morning.
One of those words. Yeah.
They know what a CFO does. They know what a COO does, a CIO, CTO. Most know what a CMO does, maybe not. But like,
Maybe. Yeah.
explain when you go in there and help a client, what are the specific things you're going to do in a typical engagement?
Yeah, good question. So let's talk about the chief of staff as a service role for us as opposed to others. And chief of staff has been around forever. It's mostly in the military. One thinks of the chief of staff at the White House being kind of the puppet master for the entire White House staff. So what we do is we go in and we work for the owner, the CEO, potentially, or the board. And we work, if you figure out the wiring diagram of a company, we have a dotted line to that senior leadership ownership role, and we're not inside the C-suite. So we are immune to the internal politics and power plays and the day-to-day emotional stuff. We are an independent advisor to each of the stakeholders, and that makes it a very unique proposition. Right. So what I do and what I recommend all of us do, and we've got, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen of us that are now in a chief of staff of the service group that we're standardizing the service, is we start with a comprehensive business assessment. Right. We take a look at everything from governance, leadership, strategy, tactics, execution, down to financial reporting, cybersecurity, and everything in between. And we do that just to get a holistic view of the company. And it's a questionnaire with one-on-one interviews that translates into a clear understanding of what the issues are from the perspective of the incoming chief of staff. And then there is a action plan that says, if you've got a problem in this particular commodity area, let's say it's planning, and planning, I would just submit to you, is the biggest problem in all companies, is that this is how to fix that problem. Aside from that, what we look at is if what Baron does what Baron does. Baron does governance, leadership, some coaching, and then planning execution. Then if there's something that involved that I don't do, marketing being a good one, then we just bring in a marketeer. One of the things that I always try to do is to bring in a very experienced senior CFO. And why do we do that? It's because a lot of these companies have good people, but they've never worked at the highest level of the CFO world. And so you get a strategic CFO assessment that reduces the cost of everything they do by a number of factors that we have in our hip pocket at ExecHQ. And then what's really powerful is a profitability analysis, because most companies have 30 to 40% of their clientele or customers that are not profitable. So we bring them a tool that tells them this demographic you're losing money on. And so the goal is to want to make them more profitable, certainly, but tangibly, we want them, this stuff, the cost reduction and profitability, to pay for all our services. So it doesn't come out of the company's pocket. So that is a unique way of looking at this situation. That's step one. Step two is when you go in and you figure out what the stakeholders want, you develop a clear, actionable, communicatable vision of the company that translates into later on a strategic plan, a tactical plan, and execution process. A lot of companies, the vision is not in writing. And we have this, I think I want to do this stuff, but we look at a very, very detailed way of looking at what I want to be when I grow up, let's say. And I look at a 5-year horizon, because beyond that, things get pretty fuzzy, right? But 5-year vision of what you want the company to do, and then plan backwards. Aside from that, I want to build a culture that allows the company's vision and core values. And if they don't have core values, we'll develop them based on what's happening in the company now. We're going to get that vision and those core values into a cohesive whole that supports whatever strategy and actionable items we're going to take. Then again, what I do is I developed a planning execution process when I first retired from the Marine Corps in 2007 and joined the business world. I take that and we use that process to have a deliberate plan that is measured, it is continuous, And that's a real important point. Most people, if they do plan, which is very few, and those that have a plan they use, which is even fewer, it's a standalone plan that happens once a year, and stuff changes within a day or two after the plan is, the ink is dry. This is a continuous process. 5-year vision, 3-year target, 1-year plan, and it is uh, actionable. There is a disciplined staff rhythm. There's deliberate communication, and there are key performance indicators that measure how you're doing on a monthly and quarterly basis. If you're not waiting 9 to 12 months to figure out how you're doing, most people take a plan, and if they have one, put it on the shelf on January the 3rd or 4th, and then never see it again until the next year. The stuff just happens, right? And this is stuff happens, and then you go, okay, if this happens, how does this change our plan? Most folks just don't do
Yeah, I
that.
think.
Fifth, go ahead,
Oh, go ahead.
please.
I was just going to say I love the planning process piece of it too, amongst the other things. But I think it's critical to because most people, a lot of goals are end of fiscal year, whether that's a calendar year or not. But and so they, about 2 months before the end of the fiscal year, they go, oh yeah, we should start focusing on maybe achieving our year end goals if they even do
No,
that.
no, no. But what my clients do in this chief of staff role and in other things that I do aside from that is we build a plan, 5-year, 3-year, 1 year, and on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. It's always reviewed. It's always changed. Nothing ever changes, and then nothing ever stays the same when you're facing a changing world. So it, it's a living, breathing document that we always go back to. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of almost draconian uh, focus on that thing, and that requires somebody outside the organization to say, no, no, folks, we're going this way, and here's why. Right? The other thing that happens is when you do that, and you talk about core values in the culture, you build an organization that supports all that. A lot of companies don't have a really good organizational structure, and they don't have the accountability with those positions, and they don't have an internal succession plan. So continuity gets in the way. And by that I mean is you've seen this. Jeff is the CEO of a company, and Jeff does 8 hats on, and Jeff never goes on vacation. When he does, nothing happens. Well, my analogy is this: after 30 years in the Marine Corps, if you're in a Marine infantry unit, and if the captain or the lieutenant that's leading the unit gets hit, somebody needs to take over right now and continue on. That goes down all the way down to the lowest person in the unit. And so the same thing should happen in business. In very few companies, the CEO or the COO or the owner or whatever, the CFO can go for 2 weeks, disconnect completely, and everything keeps going, but there's somebody taking their place. And that's crucial to everybody. With that, the chief of staff does, which is outside the C-suite, conducts coaching of the C-suite, maybe the owner, maybe the board members. It depends on who needs it, but it's available just to make sure. And because he's a kind of an honest broker, he or she is outside the organization, there's none of that weirdness about, am I competing with somebody for position? I'm a temporary dude, right? 9 to 18 months at max. I should have taught somebody how to do this, and then I step away so I don't get involved in all that internal politics. And then lastly, almost lastly, is developing corporate governance, I think, is important for a lot of companies. Not every company, but some companies really do benefit from having a real a fiduciary board with outside directors or managers. Likewise, advisory boards, I think, are underutilized in most businesses. So our chief of staff, as a service folks, know how to do that and bring that service to you. And then lastly, and then I'll be quiet for a second, is the quarterback position, right? If I go in and I know what's wrong, and I have a discussion with the board, the owner, the CEO, and we say, this is what's wrong, I can bring in other people from ExecHQ and become the quarterback of a holistic service that really brings a lot of value to a company, from marketing to cybersecurity and everything in between.
Yeah, and you said it earlier when you started pointing out, what does an engagement look like? But I think, companies either have somebody that's heading up finance and with the title of a controller, which is fine, but they think that controller is the CFO and they don't really have the expertise, or they
No,
have a title of a person that is the CFO, but is really a controller. So I think the financial assessment, is key because people need to understand. There's been examples with clients of yours and as well as mine where they don't even know what the most profitable product is, or
exactly.
products that they think are doing well is they're actually unprofitable, even though they're high
Right.
sales. So that's
Yeah, right.
interesting. Yeah.
One of the things that started this is last year I interview a lot of people coming into ExecHQ. So I'm like one of the gatekeepers. And a gentleman that had been around for a while, another gray-haired fella, I said, I perform a lot as a chief of staff. And I went, one of those aha moments, because that's what I've been doing for a very long time. And then he started doing some research, and I would ask the listening or viewing audience to go to the ExecHQ LinkedIn page. I posted an article published in 2020 by the Harvard Business Review called "The Case for the Chief of Staff," and it really outlines something that I think is phenomenal. And there were three levels of chief of staff. There was kind of the admin, executive kind of assistant. Then there was a level two that was a little bit more senior, operated in the C-suite. And then there was this level three person that was a senior due to do debt. And they were a trusted advisor outside the C-suite to the owner, CEO, or whatever board. So I think we're in that level three spot. And I think part of this podcast, there will be an article that's be attached to the podcast that I wrote a couple of weeks ago. And it's also published on LinkedIn that talks about this service in detail. And I think once you read it, I think the light bulb will come on for, I hope, will come on for the companies that really need it. Because if you're a CEO and you're weighed down and things are not operating as they should, like we talked about on 24th of January, the chaos is there. I think this position can do a lot to clear the chaos, organize the company, not take the leadership role of the CEO at all, but provide the kind of guidance and advice that brings them out of that and puts things on paper in an organized fashion so they don't have to react every time things change. They can proact based on what the plan tells them to do.
Baron, I love this service. I think it can help, and it has helped many different companies. How can people learn more about you as well as the service?
Yeah, Jeff, like I mentioned before, I think what we're going to do is put a link to the article that I wrote so they can download, read it. My email is on the article. So if they want to reach out to me directly, fantastic. Love to hear you. You can always schedule a meeting with me. And they can go to the ExecHQ website and just take a look. And I'm not a hammer for all nails. So if the gray hair and most of the stuff behind me doesn't suit their personality, their needs, well, then we'll find somebody that can perform this role that is more to their ilk, right? So we don't want to put a one single person solution. Learn what this does, and if that chaos, that the uncertainty of what's going on next and what you want to do next is part of the problem, learn more about chief of staff, and maybe it's a fit for you guys.
Baron, thank you so much for appearing again on Executives on the Front Lines podcast. I wish you a great day.
You too. Take care, Joe.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Executives on the Front Lines. If you are interested in learning more about today's guest, you can schedule a 15-minute call with them by scanning the QR code or using the link in the episode description. Please join me every 2 weeks to learn from another great leader sharing insight that can help you and your business.